compulsory draft is far more typical of a totalitarian nation than of democratic nations. The theory behind it leads directly to totalitarianism. It is absolutely opposed to the principles of individual liberty, which have always been considered a part of American democracy. Senator Robert A. Taft. Now, for those of you who don't know, totalitarianism is a form of government in which the ruler is an absolute dictator. Forcing citizens to serve in a compulsory national service does not make us a democratic society. It makes us a dictatorship. Our country was founded as a democracy, not a dictatorship. It was founded on the principles of freedom and liberty. And nowhere in those principles and beliefs set up by our forefathers does it say that all citizens will be forced to serve their country in the military. In fact, in the Revolutionary War, the soldiers who fought and died to give us our freedom were volunteer soldiers. In the history of the United States, forcing citizens to serve for their country, whether in the armed forces or in the Peace Corps, has never sat well with the general population. Just look at the riots over the draft during the Vietnam War. People marched in the streets and protested the fact that they would be forced to put their lives in jeopardy when they didn't want to. Now the affirmative is proposing that we reignite the mandatory national service for all citizens between the ages of 18 and 24. Resolved that the United States federal government should establish a system of compulsory national service for all U.S. citizens between the ages of 18 and 24. In 1973, the Conscription Act was discontinued, and America has an all-volunteer Army and Peace Corps since. During the years following, Americans have served their nation in numerous ways, not only in the armed forces, but also by serving their community. But what makes all of this matter is that these Americans are rising up on their own and volunteering because it is what they know is right. You can't force that feeling upon anyone. It has to be desired by the volunteer himself. That person has to want to help the community in order for the work to truly mean anything. But the truly amazing thing is that the number of Americans who are rising up and volunteering is greatly increasing. According to the Corporation for National and Community Service, 2008 saw a 31% increase in the number of citizens who volunteered in national or local communities from 2007. If the rate at which Americans are volunteering for the community is increasing, why do we need to make a compulsory national service anyway? Also, according to the Corporation for National and Community Service, 55% of students worldwide, which is 10.6 million students, high school and lower, participate in charitable services each year. Finally, since 1989, teens between the ages of 16 to 19 have more than doubled the time at which they spend volunteering. This clearly shows how the percent of teenagers and young adults who are volunteering is increasing. So rather than force everyone to serve in the compulsory national service, why don't we let students naturally gravitate towards volunteering? Also, according to GoArmy.com, the United States Armed Forces has exceeded the amount of recruits that it has set up as a goal for itself in 2009. 247,092 volunteered in the Army, which is 100% and 106% of the goal set up by the Armed Forces, which was originally 231,918. 231,918. In order to keep both our national border safe and also to fight the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. In the debate whether or not to mandate a compulsory national service, one very important question comes to mind. Will those serving be paid? And if they aren't paid, isn't that considered slavery? In the past, drafted soldiers have been paid for their efforts in preserving our freedom. So if the government were to mandate this system, would they still be paid now? According to the article in the Washington Monthly titled Care for the Draft, it costs $99,000 per year in medical care, housing, salary, supplies, training, and family benefits for each recruit. If we were to multiply that by the estimated 30 million U.S. citizens between the ages of 18 and 24, according to the 2000 census, then we would find that it would cost almost $3 trillion a year in order to pay and provide care for those recruits. With the national debt at $13 trillion and spending benefits and spending being cut out left and right, does it really seem logical for the national government to increase pay by almost $3 trillion? But if this system was allowed and the recruits weren't paid, then wouldn't that constitute as slavery? Slavery is defined as work done under harsh conditions for little or no pay. So if these recruits, who are placed in harsh conditions, such as on the front lines where bullets are flying over their head, and they don't receive pay, isn't that slavery? According to the 13th Amendment, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime, whether the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. So, if the federal government were to enforce this plan and not pay the recruits, then isn't that slavery? Not only do Americans have to worry about how much the soldiers will be paid, we also have to worry about veteran benefits. An average of 1 in 8 veterans return from the war with post-traumatic stress syndrome, which is an anxiety disorder associated with serious traumatic events and characterized by such symptoms as survivor guilt, realizing the trauma in dreams, numbness, and lack of involvement with reality or recurrence, thoughts, and images. Few can be cured of this disorder, and most veterans suffer from it for the rest of their lives. Also, according to an article by the Fox News, the number of disabled veterans has risen 25% since 2001 and is now 2.9 million. The United States is also expected to pay these veterans $59 billion in the next 25 years. Thank you, and vote nay.